Afternoon. I'm here with Kevin Guthrie, our Florida DEM director. Hurricane Ian made landfall this afternoon in southwest Florida, and it is battering areas in southwest Florida, Lee, Charlotte, and counties even beyond that. We have seen life-threatening storm surge, as was predicted. We've also seen major flooding in places like Collier County, Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach. You're also seeing inland flooding because of the inundation that you're seeing. So some of the counties in the interior of the state are seeing major water events as well. We do know that Lee, Hendry, and Glades 911 call centers are being rerouted. Those comms are down, so calls are being answered, and teams and the people that are calling are being noted, and then those local first responders will deploy as soon as it's safe to do so. Now, obviously, local responders can make decisions, but by and large, until the storm passes, they are not going to go into a situation for rescue and put their own folks at risk. And so we know that there are folks who are in the really high risk zone A evacuation zones who did not evacuate. Some have called in, and those people are being logged, and there will be a response, but it's likely going to take a little time for this storm to move forward so that it's safe for the first responders to be able to do. We are getting reports, but it's going to take a little bit more time to know exactly in terms of structural damage, but we are getting some reports of structural damage in both Lee and Charlotte counties, but I would say overwhelmingly, it's been that surge that has been the biggest issue, and the flooding that has resulted as a result of that. In some areas, we think it's hit 12 feet. Now, it is our meteorologists' view that the storm surge has likely peaked and will likely be less in the coming hours than it has been up to this point. But we know that this has been a big storm, and it's done a lot of damage as it is. It is going to continue to move through the state of Florida. You're going to see hurricane force winds in places in central Florida, perhaps. It's clearly a very strong tropical storm all the way until it exits the Florida peninsula in the Atlantic Ocean. There are, as much as we're focused on southwest Florida, very important, obviously, when you have a storm of this nature. I think at landfall, it's going to be behind only the Labor Day hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, and Hurricane Michael in terms of intensity. I think we're going to end up seeing that. It may end up being a Category 5, but at a minimum, it's going to be a very strong Category 4 that's going to rank as one of the top 5 hurricanes to ever hit the Florida peninsula. So that damage is ongoing. It's very, very important. But the fact is, there's going to be damage throughout the whole state, and people in other parts of the state, be prepared for some impacts. And you are seeing counties in different parts of the state issue evacuation orders. Clay County in northeast Florida, which we do anticipate some major flooding events in northeast Florida. I think folks that are familiar with the St. Johns River know that when you have weather like this, you will see this. And so Clay County has issued mandatory evacuations of low-lying areas along the St. Johns River. Flagler County has issued mandatory evacuations of its barrier islands, low-lying areas, and mobile homes. Nassau has issued evacuation orders for low-lying areas. St. Johns County is evacuating coastal and low-lying areas, including the city of St. Augustine, as well as the city of St. Augustine Beach. Putnam County has recommended evacuation for low-lying areas and areas that have a history of flooding. And Sumter County is advising evacuations of mobile homes. And so those are places that are hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the initial impact in southwest Florida, and yet they are having to evacuate folks that are living in vulnerable areas. We have over 1.1 million reported power outages. Now, there are crews that are still working outside of southwest Florida, but just understand that number is going to grow. You're going to see more power outages as this storm moves through the center part of our state and before it exits into the Atlantic coast. There are 100 portable cell phone towers ready to be deployed into Southwest Florida once it is safe to enter, and should that be needed. We want to make sure people are staying out of the way of emergency crews and out of floodwaters and away from all down power lines. As soon as emergency crews can get in, they are going to get in. As soon as it's safe to go and clear the roadways, Florida Department of Transportation is going to go in and clear those roadways. These are all on standby. They are ready to go. They understand the importance of a really, really quick response. As I mentioned earlier today, we have now officially sent the letter with the request to the Biden administration for a major disaster declaration for all 67 counties, requesting the federal government do 100% reimbursement up front for 60 days to ensure that we can quickly move forward into this response and recovery phase. And I know sometimes they wait till different damage assessments are made, but in this situation, you've got a massive Category 4 storm that you compare Charlie to this. This is way, way, way bigger than Charlie. It was as strong as Charlie coming in, but Charlie was much smaller. So this is a big one, and I think we all know there's going to be major, major impacts. We are, not only are there 42,000 linemen, they are positioned all across the state of Florida. As soon as it's safe to go, those personnel are going to go in to resume power, and that's something that's very, very important. In terms of rescue efforts, obviously there's robust efforts in each of these counties. I mean, some of these are major counties in our state, like Lee County, Collier County. They've got great response teams. The state of Florida, we are providing a lot of support that's staged and ready to go. We have almost 250 aircraft, more than 1,600 high water vehicles, and more than 300 boats of all drafts and sizes, including 250 already stationed in the major impacted areas, and nearly 50 that are staged and immediately ready to come in. And so with water this high, these operations may need to be waterborne operations. Now, there are some where you're going to need to use the water to get to some of the barrier islands anyways. But you look at like Collier County, I mean, downtown Naples is flooded. That's probably going to subside as the time goes on, but they're prepared for a lot of different eventualities. We're thankful for the states that have sent us resources, and we're very, very appreciative of them stepping up and helping Florida. As this storm passes your community, understand it's still a very hazardous situation. You're going to have down power lines. You're going to have a possibility of harm's way because of standing water, misuse of generators. I asked the Department of Emergency Management, Kevin, to produce for me the rundown of the fatalities through direct impacts of storms versus the aftermath. And in Hurricane Irma, there were 7 fatalities directly because of the storm, and there were 77 that were a result of post-storm. And a lot of that is standing water, down power lines, misuse of generators. So please just take precaution. Obviously, a ferocious storm coming in, very hazardous, very ominous. We know the life-threatening nature of that. But once the storm goes, once there is apparent calm, there are still plenty of hazards out there. So just please make sure that you're taking the proper precautions. I'm happy that Volunteer Florida has now activated the Florida Disaster Fund. Sometimes people say, hey, we want to help. What can we do? And there's really two things you can do. One, send some donations, money. The other can be donate your time. What's not helpful is sending items and sending things to us. We have a lot of stuff pre-positioned. If there's a need for other stuff, Kevin and his team will work. FEMA, all these other groups can work to provide that. But if you provide money to some volunteer organizations and charity groups, they can make a big impact in people's lives. And if you're willing to volunteer your time, there's going to be ways you can be put to work, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need help on the back end of this thing. So if you want to contribute, you can go to floridadisasterfund.org or text disaster to 20222. For those who want to come and volunteer, we have an official volunteer portal at Volunteer Florida, www.volunteerflorida.org, to find volunteer opportunities. This storm is doing a number on the state of Florida. It is going to continue to move through this state today and through much of tomorrow. and there's going to continue to be a number of adverse effects. I can tell you that as soon as it moves beyond Southwest Florida, you're going to see a massive surge of personnel and supplies to be able to help those who are in need, get people back on their feet, and help to rebuild those communities.